He told me to sit down. He told me this chamber was not the place for emotion, not the place for confrontation. He demanded silence. But silence is the luxury of those who do not bury their children in dust. And I do not come from silence. I come from the fire. I come from a land where children wake to the sound of drones, not birds, where mothers carry both life and grief in the same womb, where leaders are expected to bow and punished when they don't. So no, I did not sit down. I stood and I spoke. Not for applause, not for protocol, but because my people are watching. Africa is watching.
The United Nations General Assembly had seen disruptions before walkouts, protests, delayed speeches, but nothing quite like what happened that afternoon. A moment designed for diplomacy became something far more dangerous, something truthful. It started when Prime Minister Netanyahu, mid-session, leaned forward and declared, "This body was not created for lectures. If you intend to grandstand, kindly remove yourself." His voice was sharp, calculated, and meant to belittle. The chamber fell silent. Delegates looked at each other, some stunned, some smirking, others pretending not to hear. And then, slowly, Traoré closed his folder.
You are uncomfortable, not because I am wrong, but because I have not dressed my truth in your language. Your discomfort is not my concern. My concern is the mother in Rafah holding her son's broken body. My concern is the African child watching, wondering why his leaders always whisper, never roar. So listen closely. You may command armies, you may control headlines, but what you cannot command is our silence. You cannot kill every voice.
The reaction was immediate. Some delegations stood in applause, others sat frozen, as forward, unwilling to break ranks. The Israeli delegation conferred quickly. Netanyahu remained seated but visibly irritated. His smirk was gone. Around the world, the clip began circulating within seconds. Traoré's words were being translated into 64 languages within the hour. On TikTok, the audio was already trending.
You weaponize history. You manipulate memory. You pretend to be the only ones who've suffered while turning others into shadows. But we see you. Africa sees you. And we are done applauding murder dressed as self-defense.
In Kinshasa, young activists began organizing within the hour. In Bamako, murals of Traoré began appearing on overpasses and university walls. CNN called it combustible. Al Jazeera called it unapologetically historic. Fox News called it an unprovoked attack. But for millions, it was a reckoning. In Palestine, Gaza, Jenin's speech was played on loudspeakers like a prayer of defiance.
I was not elected to decorate these chambers with gentle phrases. I was chosen by a people who demand courage, not caution. And if I must be called extreme for saying that bombs should not fall on children, if I must be isolated for saying that aid should not be blocked by politics, then so be it. I choose isolation over cowardice.
Netanyahu eventually walked out, escorted by aides. Some claimed it was due to a prior engagement. Either way, Traoré didn't stop. Others said it was anger.
Walk out if you must, but know this. Africa will not walk out with you. We are walking into a new future, and you are no longer its gatekeeper. For decades, you've demanded our silence in exchange for aid, for deals, for crumbs, but we are no longer hungry.
Over 35 nations released statements, some condemning, others cautiously supporting. The African Union convened an emergency session. Social media platforms were ablaze. Hashtags like Traoré Speaks, Africa Stands, and Unshaken were trending worldwide. In Paris, crowds gathered outside embassies chanting his name. In Washington, analysts debated whether the UN had just witnessed a fundamental shift in global power. The aftermath rippled like an earthquake.
This was never about me and Netanyahu. This is about power, about who holds the mic, about who gets to decide whose lives matter and whose don't. But today, I took the mic, and I didn't ask for permission.
Inside African living rooms, the message was clearer than ever. Africa was no longer whispering. Western media struggled. Some outlets cut parts of the speech. Others ran full segments, unsure whether to critique or celebrate.
If they say I embarrassed diplomacy, good. Diplomacy should be embarrassed. Because it watched entire cities burn and said nothing. It watched nations collapse and sent statements. You fear the truth because the truth does not flatter you. But I did not come here to flatter. I came here because I promised my people I would never leave them voiceless again.
No notes, no handshakes, no press photo. Just thunderous silence and the roar of history shifting. From Burkina Faso to Gaza, from Cape Town to Caracas, From blackboards in classrooms to protest banners in capital cities, one message repeated. He said what others were too afraid to say. And with that, Traoré stepped away from the podium.
They demanded silence. We gave them a voice, and that voice echoes now across the world.